Hey guys, this is Jan Gustafsson for Chess24. I'm sure you've figured out that information if you've looked at the screen where it says Jan Gustafsson and Chess24, I believe twice. This is a little show about the chess action of today's Saturday, November the 29th at the time of recording this. And two big events are going on. One is the Qatar Open with Anish Giri, with Vladimir Kramnik. Those are the two players I'm keeping an eye on. The other event is the Russian Individual Championship with our boy Peter Svidler, where today's big game in round 2 was Ian Nepomniachtchi against Sergei Karyakin. We're going to be taking a look at all these games, and I hope you're going to stick around with me to see what's going on. In Qatar, Anish Giri, spoiler alert, remains perfect on 4 out of 4. He's crushing the opposition. Now, Anish Giri is in the live rating list a world top 10 player already. He's received a little bit of criticism once in a while for not being able to defeat a lot of other elite players. And while that might be true to some extent, it is also true for pretty much everybody. And let's not forget, Anish is only 20 years old. He does thrive when he plays against slightly weaker opponents. We've seen that on many occasions recently, where he's just really been boosting his rating in the European Team Championship, the Spanish League, and now this time around in Qatar, where he started with 4 out of 4, beating Antipov, Mishta, Ivanisevic and Oleksienko. And we can see his live rating is back up to a very healthy 2779, almost 2780, number 7 in the world. Of course, the tournament is far from over, but so far he's been doing very well. And let's have a look at how he did it today, where he faced another 2600 Grandmaster and, one has to say, did defeat him in pretty convincing fashion. Hope we get the board up there. Yeah, here we are. Anish Giri with white against Mikhailo Oleksienko from the Ukraine. Giri played e4, can do both e4 and d4 as most of these top guys. Oleksienko played the Kazan, and Anish went for the move 3e5, which is all the rage at the highest level, gaining space. Nowadays, people seem to think that this space advantage provided by this pawn is more important than allowing this bishop to develop freely. Still, of course, that's what Oleksienko does, bishop f5, and Giri chooses the move h4. Main line here is the move knight to f3, which has been seen a lot more, planning to develop quietly with bishop e2 and castles. But h4, a bit of a move that has some momentum. The intention is pretty simple. Black can't go e6 because then white would win this bishop with g4, bishop somewhere, and it's trapped. So black has to react, and white hopes that he gains some extra space with the move h4. Sometimes he wants to follow up with g4 and h5, clamp down on the king side. Sometimes he wants to have an outpost on g5 if black were to play h5. Oleksienko does none of these things. h6 and h5 are the main lines here. But instead he plays the move c5, which is a move I've analyzed quite a bit in the past as well, because it looks appealing. You react to a push on the edge of the board by counterplay in the center. I wasn't that sure this is a good idea for black, and today's game certainly does not support the case for the move c5. However, it does look natural. Critical test is d takes c5, knight c6 is played, bishop to b5, pinning this knight, and queen to c7. Here I believe I was mainly checking moves like knight to c3 and knight to f3, but Giri plays a different move. He plays the move knight to e2, which is very interesting as well. In case e5 is taken, he blocks the e-file ahead of time and reserves all the options to go knight c3, bishop to f4, knight to d4. Very interesting opening idea, this move knight e2. Giri is strongest in the opening, so I wouldn't rule it out that he knew all about this. Queen takes d5, by the way, is not such a good idea, because after e6 here, black develops too quickly and black is fine. So knight e2, queen takes e5 was played in the game. I think this is already a mistake. It just breaks. Once again, it's tough to put everything into opening rules, but this I think breaks too many here by just making too many moves with the queen, and it doesn't work well in this very position. Black should have tried the move e6, when he's arguably a bit worse after bishop e3. But still, this does look playable now, something like knight to e7. The e5 pawn is still up for grabs later on, and the game continues. But we wouldn't have this short, entertaining game we got on our hands here. Queen takes e5, bishop to f4, queen takes b2. Obviously, the idea to keep grabbing pawns. But it is not without reason that b2 is often called the poisoned pawn. In the Sicilian Najdorf, there is a whole variation where the black queen takes b2, which is called the poisoned pawn variation, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I'm mistaken. Anyway, it's consistent. Queen takes b2, knight b to c3, defending both the bishop and the rook, so it's a nice multi-purpose move. And here Oleksienko decided on the move knight to f6 to develop some pieces. I have a feeling this was not his original intention. He's a 26-20 player, so he's aware of all these opening principles. I believe his intention was to concretely play bishop takes c2. And now over the board, it dawned on him that white can play the very spectacular queen takes d5, sacrificing both rooks, but you can't take them. And after queen takes a1, king to d2, queen takes h1. Queen takes h1 is a mistake, but it is the prettiest line. White would checkmate by force with bishop c6, bc6, queen c6, king d8, check here, check here, king here, check here, checkmate. So that could have been an even quicker end to the game. Instead of queen takes h1, black had to try something like rook to d8, but white would come out on top. Let's say takes here, takes here, takes here. And the ending is not going to be a lot of fun for black because his pieces aren't really out yet. And his king is a little exposed all alone. So instead, Oleksienko played knight f6. Well, once again, his lack of development and all these super active white pieces do look scary. Giri just castles, finishing his development already. Black is nowhere near that. Queen to b4, he tries to extract his queen from this b2, well, danger zone. But it does not really work well. However, there were no good alternatives for black. I believe it's already too late here. Queen takes c2, runs into takes, and knight to d4, exploiting this double attack. Black's just in trouble. Bottom line, don't move your queen around too early in the opening, especially if you're black against a 27-80 player. Queen b4, another move with the queen, rook to b1, forces yet another, queen takes c5. Here a very strong move. Move bishop to a4. Going out of the way so this rook can attack b7, and it turns out black can't really defend that pawn. If he tried b6, he would not only weaken this diagonal, he would also, more importantly, lose the queen. After rook to b5, queen to c4, bishop to b3, and the poor queen wouldn't really have anywhere to go. So after bishop a4, not only rook b7 is a lethal threat, but also rook to b5. Black is lost. He tried e5, but the easiest was just bishop takes e5, once again exploiting this pin. Knight to g4, desperately jumping around, but he's not really making progress with his development. Bishop g3, and all the white forces are active. The game will end very, very shortly here. Long castles. Well, this is a cute way to defend b7 and get the king out of one danger zone. The problem is it puts the king into another, and it's not going to last long there. Bishop takes c6, a concrete solution. Queen takes c6, b takes c was no better. Multiple ways to win here for white. Easiest maybe. Check, check. And after king e8, just to play so many wins. Rook e1 or knight to d4, opening this e-file. And this king is just not going to last very long. It does matter to have all your pieces in play, and black does have two spectators at the very least in all these lines, so the position is pretty hopeless. Instead he played queen takes c6, now just knight to b5, increasing the pressure, threatening a little. Knight takes a7 check, bishop c5, knight e d4. white pieces just flow into the action naturally. Queen to f6 and queen to f3. And Oleksienko had seen enough. He resigned here. f5 is under attack. If bishop takes d4 is played, white just takes back, and black doesn't have a defense because queen takes d4 runs into queen takes f5, check. He has to play rook d7, and here many pretty moves. Rook takes b7 is the quickest way to end it all. King b7, queen takes d7. So there's not much to do for black. After queen f3, white is just having too many threats. Queen c3, knight f5, queen f5. Not much you can do. So Oleksienko decided to resign. Didn't even make it to move 20. Lost in 18 moves. Others would have continued for a move or two to make that 20 move mark, but it didn't happen. Not a good game for him. An easy win by Anish Giri, just showing the power of development, pieces, initiative. Sitting on 4 out of 4. The other guy I've been following keenly in this tournament is Vladimir Kramnik. Had a really bad start with 2 draws, then managed to win in round 3, grinding out an equal position with black. And today it looks like he got rolling a little bit. Played Polish Grandmaster, I believe, Alexander Mishta, with the white pieces and crushed him. A takes b, queen g4, we're entering the final attack stage. Bishop to f8, knight takes c5, nice little tactic. Can't take because of queen takes g7, checkmate. So Mishta had to try f5, and Kramnik just sacrifices a piece, had seen far in advance that his attack will crash through here. Mainly because this assassin on a1 is really, really powerful, and combined with the queen and the knight, there's not much white can do. White can do wrong, or black can do to avoid being checkmated. Main threat at this point is knight to f6 check, king to h8, and queen to h7 checkmate. Mishta tried bishop to a3, but it did not help. Knight f6 check, king to f8, obviously king h8 runs into queen h7 checkmate once again. So he played king f8, d takes e6, not really caring about material and the initiative. The attack is just too strong. For example, bishop takes c1, runs into knight d7 check with mate to follow shortly. Let's say king to e7, queen to f7, checkmate. Instead, queen b7 was played, at least threatening mate himself, but it was not quite in time. Kramnik just went e4. Many other moves won as well, frankly. Knight h7 check. But e4 is good enough. Takes on f6, queen takes, king e8, queen g6, king f8. Takes another pawn with check just for fun. And queen h5 check, the precise finish when mate is not very far. King f8 is the most resilient, but it runs into a series of little checks. Check, 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 and no matter where you go, mate will come. King e6 is checkmate in 1, queen f6, while king e8 runs into queen g8 check, bishop f8 is forced because king e7 once again is mate in 1. I'll leave that one to you guys, and here it's mate in 2. Check, check. So a very instructive attack by Vladimir Kramnik, who seems to be catching some speed, is on 3 out of 4 now, still in the running. But of course, Qatar is an open tournament, which means there's a lot of players, a lot of strong players. You don't see a lot of open tournaments with guys like Kramnik and Giri and Vashiela Graf and who else is there? Mamed Yarov, so many top players, Ding Liren, can't list them all. Might be a new trend. It's going to be interesting. Still a lot of rounds to go in that one. Another tournament that has been going on, seeing its second round today, is the Russian Individual Championship, or the Russian Super Final, where Kramnik is absent, as we can see. Grishuk is absent, but a bunch of other very, very strong players are obviously in it. The most prominent ones are probably Sergei Karyakin and Peter Svidler. Peter Svidler today with a draw against the surprising tournament leader Igor Lisi, one of these strong Russian players no one's really heard of. But Sergei Karjakin did not have such a great day, and we'll go have a look why in 1 second. Here we are with the game. Jan Nepomniachtchi against Sergei Karjakin. Jan Nepomniachtchi, former Russian champion, won in 2010, is only 24 years old, so is Sergei Karjakin. Nepomniachtchi got some exposure recently, not only commentating the World Championship match together with Peter Svidler on a couple days, but also there's been a lot of rumors, some half-confirmed rumors, that he's been working with Magnus Carlsen, for Magnus Carlsen, gave some advice on how to handle the Sicilian, played by Vishy Anand. He's certainly been associated with Magnus and is of course a terribly strong player in his own right. Today he does not look like he really wants to go for a theory battle, but plays the move 1 to f4, which is not seen very often at this level. However, Sergei Karjakin is very well known for being one of the biggest theoreticians out there. So it's probably, or arguably, not a bad idea to play something a little offbeat against him, and it would certainly pay off in this game for Jan Nepomniachtchi. f4, d5, knight f3, g6, g3, bishop g7. He decides to play the very trendy Leningrad Dutch with an extra tempo, which should not, make Black's life too difficult, but it certainly offers a fresh, complicated game away from the mainstream. Both sides do interesting things in the opening. I'll jump ahead a little bit. d4, knight to e4. I'm not a big fan of the move knight d7 here, played by Karjakin. Looks a little bit unnatural. And after c3, it turned out he couldn't really keep his outpost on d4. I'm assuming the idea of knight to d7 was to play the move c5 here originally to support this pawn, but then it looks like he changed his mind. I'm not quite sure why he did, but after cd, let's say, I don't know, castles, position doesn't look too bad for Black. However, the knight on d7 might be a little bit misplaced. But what he did in the game after c3 to play knight f5, I'm not a big fan of at all. C takes d, knight takes. And now all of a sudden White, in spite of his slightly goofy opening, already has the center and a nice space advantage. Nepomniachtchi would build that up, and based on his super solid structure, this nice knight already had a serious advantage over here. Couple moves later, I should say something about all these moves, but in general, White has just been pushing his advantage home, and Black is in serious trouble here against the two white bishops with a weakness on c6, and Karjakin decided he had no other way out than complicating things with the move knight takes d4, which probably, with hindsight, added insult to injury and accelerated the end a little bit. He should have stayed put with a move like rook c7, but not that surprising. He did not fancy to defend this position. Instead, he went knight d4, e takes d, bishop takes d4, which might look pretty decent on paper. You not only get 2 pawns immediately, you're also sure to pick up an exchange on f2 because of the pin. The problem, however, is that White always remains with the two bishops, the bishops on g2 and d2 against the black rook, and the two bishops are a devastating force in a semi-open position like this one. So after a couple of accurate moves by White, forcing this bishop f2, king f2, the black position is pretty much hopeless here because these guys are just too strong. And the game would end actually pretty quickly because of good technique by Jan Nepomniachtchi. Would bring home the whole point. These guys just are too powerful. A rook can't compete with them. And actually after rook c7, rook h2, bishop to f1, Karjakin had already seen enough and decided to resign with his bishop coming to c4. There's not so much you can do. Let's say h5. Bishop takes c4. Let's make a neutral move. It's not even easy to find a square for this rook. Rook d2, bishop to e7, and f7 is going to crumble. Rook to e8, bishop to b4, and there you got it. Bishop f7 is coming. So game over, and Jan Nepomniachtchi scoring a big win against one of the top favorites, the highest rated player in the field, Sergei Karyakin. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a bunch of players tied on 1.5 out of 2. Igor Lisi I named earlier. Jan Nepomniachtchi himself joins those guys. I believe Vadim Sviagintsev is up there. Certainly an interesting tournament. I can't help but rooting for our beloved co-worker Peter Svedla, who's won this tournament only 7 times, and I believe he really should win it an 8th time just to make sure he's capable of winning the Russian Championship. That was my overview of the day in Qatar. Giri is cruising, but it's a long way to go. Russian Championship obviously is an even longer way to go. Only 2 rounds have been played there. I hope you guys enjoyed the summary, and I'll see you next time around. Until then, thanks for watching, everybody. This was Jan Gustafsson for Chess24. Bye bye.